Greetings ladies and mental gents, and welcome to my channel, where I like to make audio narrations of various stories from the internet. In this video, we'll be focusing on a story from the subreddit HFY, called Fresh Start, Thicker Than Water. Devia Cosman Rianne Nevershell, Princess of the Ascended Throne, Grand Duchess of the Crescent Nebula, Wielder of the Sacred Stone, Keeper of the Nevershell Hierarchy Tomb. First of her name looked at the small ID card in her hand. It simply said, Devia Cosman, MD, Cosman, and was plenty common name despite her bloodline tracing back to the original lineage. She rubbed her finger over the MD part and smiled. It was the only title that she had to work for, the rest had been given through sheer luck of being born into the right family. Or perhaps the wrong one, depending on your outlook. She was the eighth in line to the throne, close enough to be exceptionally valuable politically, but far enough away that she didn't even have the power or position people thought that she did. Besides, her eldest brother had already secured his position as the next in line with a few choice assassinations. He could keep it. She really didn't want the responsibility or the stress. She looked out through the porthole and down at the planet that she was going to be her new home and smiled a bit wider. She had had to sell all of her jewelry so that she could get her hands on a point for a few shady individuals where she could, and call in every favor that she had, but she was finally out. Not legally, of course, but it should be at least a week before the family discovered she'd run off. No more banquets, ceremonies, or suitors for her. Miss will be landing soon. She looked up and smiled at the ugly creature that spoke to her. Thank you, she said quickly and secured the small satchel that she had most of her valuable belongings now. They'd bring out her duffel bag and a few simple clothes once they landed. She took her time to evaluate the ugly crewman. This species was fresh to the galactic scene. Their technology was downright barbaric. Their culture was 1,000 years behind her people, and their propensity for violence and injury was pronounced. There were all the reasons she'd chosen to live amongst them. Hopefully they had no idea who she was, and with how often they should need a doctor, her position on the little colony should be secure. It would give her a chance to live amongst the strange new creatures, experience life as a commoner, and she'd be able to practice medicine with her royal life never would have allowed. There were some aspects that she wasn't particularly fond of, however. They seemed to eat a lot of meat, and their bodies apparently couldn't be efficiently break down all of they ate, so they had an awful habit of releasing semi-toxic gases. Not to mention, they had bony protrusions that grew out of their digits. She'd been told that if they didn't trim them down regularly, they'd get very sharp and full of dirt. The faces were also rather ugly to her. It sort of looked like someone had smacked them in the face with a stick when they were young. It was too scrunched up. The ship began to rumble, and she saw the flare of heat around the viewport as the ship reached the atmosphere. She couldn't believe that they relied on heat shields and thermal plating. Hopefully, they developed more sophisticated vessels soon. But the captain did a fine job, and they were soon landed, with only a gentle bounce on the landing pad. She unfastened her seat, and the creature showed her back to help her. She was the only passenger in the supply run. Well, Miss Cosman, welcome to the human colony of Carrier, he said with a nod in return. Thank you. She walked down the ramp onto the planet itself and looked around, her long ears twitching and turning as she took in the sights and sounds. They were on the edge of a very basic little colony, and the prefab so far. No new construction, and they were any streets that she spotted, just a few lights of the outside of the same structures. When nightfall came, it would be dark indeed. There were a few small groups of these trees on the edges of the town, but this part of the planet was dominated by wide fields. They were setting up for ranching and farming until the colony got more established. It should be quiet and boring, and she was looking forward to it. Ma'am, your bag? She turned, and one of the humans was holding her duffel from the cargo hold. She blinked and looked at him, unsure what he wanted, and then realization hit her. "Oh, I'm to carry it. Yes, of course. Sorry." She took a strap and laughed a little, realizing that it was silly to think that they'd do such a thing for her. Shouldering the strap of her own duffel bag, she had to lean a bit to try and keep positioned correctly. Now that she had a bag and her satchel on her person, she was literally carrying all of her possessions. A long cry from living in the luxurious prison. The humans were busy unloading the cargo from the ship, and no one seemed to be approaching her, so she began to walk into the town. As she approached one of the first buildings, she gasped in surprise as two humans suddenly tumbled out of the door, wrapped up in a struggle of some kind. They were kicking and punching, biting and scratching. She looked around, noticing that the humans were watching, but she couldn't believe that this was normal. Hello? Where are the, law enforcement?" She asked one of the humans walking by, who gave her a strange look and then kept going. "Law enforcement," she cried out, trying to find someone to stop the fight. However, she had yelled that out, and two stopped and looked up at her. "Yeah? What do you want?" She paused wide-eyed and opened her mouth, and then she realized that the two figures were wearing armored uniforms of the human law variety. "You're this town's law enforcement. Look, lady, out here, we're deputies. If you want the sheriff, she's in her office." "Yeah? What do you want anyway?" "You two are having an altercation. Isn't that against the law?" The two looked at one another and began to laugh as they untangled their limbs and got up. "Damn, lady, it's just a brotherly love. I'm Hick, and this is Yokel. Howdy." "You're brothers. Why were you fighting?" They shrugged. "I think one of us said something stupid." "Probably." "And the sheriff allows you two to behave like this?" Devia couldn't believe the two wouldn't be protecting her from vagabonds and rapscallions. "Well, Mom sure don't like it, but we kinda do it anyway." "Your mother is the sheriff." They nodded. Devia didn't know what to make of it. Perhaps the humans were a little too crazy, but she couldn't change her plans now. This was a chance at freedom, so she shrugged. Well, if you're not, in the conflict anymore, could you point me to the clinic?" "Oh, are you the new Sawbones? Doc said that we were getting the new one of you. Good thing, too. He's mighty busy sometimes right this way." They turned around and began to lead her down the street, as if they hadn't been fighting and were indeed best friends. Or brothers, as it turned out. "What's a Sawbones?" "A surgeon. Sometimes we run out of the right meds and such, so they cut injured limbs off and stitch 'em up the wounds." She made a face at the idea. That hadn't really been covered in med school. She knew how to perform amputation, of course, but they made it sound downright common. So is the colony equipped with a cybernetics lab for prosthetics?" If you mean them robot arms and legs and stuff, then no. We put in a request in a few months and a supply ship will bring a couple. Until then, it's good old-fashioned wood." The horrified look on her face was missed as they led her down the street. They finally stopped in front of a prefab building at the center. "Here you are." She noted the Red Cross as the humans used to denote health and wondered why they didn't just give a holo projector above the entrance to Market's location. Perhaps the town is small and everyone knew where it was. She looked between the two and gave a little curtsy, even though she was wearing pants. "I appreciate the escort, Hick and Yokel." "You calling us names, lady?" They suddenly leaned forward as if she had insulted them. "What? Wait, no. But isn't... I'm sure." She frowned as she tried to think if she had the wrong human words before they laughed. Yokel slapped her on the shoulder and she staggered to the side, barely containing a gasp of pain. "We're just wrecking with you. See you around, I'm sure." They moved on and waved, and she supposed that was a friendly human greeting, but she rubbed her shoulder and winced. She couldn't remember the last time someone had struck her, and they had behaved like that with a totally normal. A little nervous about her new friends and neighbors, she opened the door to the clinic and stepped inside. There was a small waiting room and a reception desk with no one behind it. "Hello?" she asked the empty room. Then there was a flash of blue image and a female human appeared behind the counter. "Greetings, I am Diane. Welcome to the new Georgia clinic. I think we're in Carrier." Miss, I am a highly sophisticated AI. I think I know which planet we're on. All right. I'm Devia Cosman. I'm the new surgeon and general physician. Miss, I don't appreciate the practical jokes. Talking rabbits cannot be doctors. What? She blinked in confusion. Her tail twitched a little bit anxiously. What was a rabbit? What was that, some sort of slur? This was the most confusing AI that she'd ever dealt with. What the hell is the racket? She heard a gruff voice growl out before one of the doors leading further into the clinic opened up to reveal the elderly-looking human with graying hair and a thick moustache. Shut the hell up, Diane. I do not recognize this command. Shut down your electronic bimbo. The blue figure vanished, and Devia was clutching her satchel nervously as she looked at the human, who looked her over and immediately relaxed. Ah, sorry about that. You must be the Laureline doctor that I was expecting. Hippocris Carrier. She winced as she butchered the greeting, but then smiled. Thank you. Yes, I'm Devia Cosman, and you're the town doctor. I wasn't given a name. Doc Ramon. Your English is pretty good. Laureline is rather adept at learning languages. Ah, always good to know. I'm handy in English and Spanish, with a little bit of some Xeno tongues. That's nice, she said, and held back her surprise that he only knew 2 languages fluently. It did explain why he was butchering the greeting. What about you? 592 fluent languages. The old man arched his bushy eyebrows, and that slowly nodded. Ah, well, good to have an interpreter around. Here, let me show you to your room. He turned, waving her back through the door that he'd stepped out of. The halls were bare and pure white, and she knew that the humans like to keep hospitals and clinics sterile colors for some reason. Soon, he stepped into a small room that was roughly the size of one of her showers. Well, they weren't her showers anymore, were they? There was a bed, some shelves, a desk dresser, and a bathroom that was tiny compared to what she used to use. It's a bit small, I'm afraid. It's perfect, she said with a smile and hefted her bag onto the bed. This is all that I have anyway. I don't need much space. Well, that's the spirit then, youngster. I'm afraid that I'm not entirely up to the law and culture and all of that. Your credentials look great, but I couldn't tell the classwork apart from the residency. How long have you been a doctor? Oh, I'm only 45. This is my first posting. He reached around his brows so that he could tell that he was confused. We generally don't leave home until our 50s. I'm actually one of the youngest to graduate the academy. But I assure you I have performed hundreds of operations at this point. Well, that's some relief then. I was worried that you hadn't cut someone open before. I haven't actually cut an organism open. They're virtual reality. But I assure you that we have the finest medical education in the galaxy. I don't think that's an issue. The human shrugged. Well, the autodoc has its last legs. There are days that I don't trust it for more than amputations, so having a surgeon is better than having none. I'm glad to have some help here. I don't even have a nurse. You don't? Nah. The last one was some rich preppy girl from some core planets who wanted to play at being a frontier doctor. She couldn't hack it in 1 week before she was crying for her home. Devia's face went neutral at the news. But you're in your 40s. I'm sure that you've been out to the frontier before. No. No? This is my first time away from home. Oh, he said, a bit surprised. Well, I'm sure you'll be fine. Here, let me show you around the place. Oh, Dr. Ramon. Just call me Doc. Doc, what's a rabbit? What? The AI called me a talking rabbit. Ah, don't mind Diane. She's a second-hand hunk of junk. I don't think she has laurelines in her database yet. Rabbits are animals from Earth. They have long ears and fur and short tails, like you, so there's some resemblance. Oh, are they nice animals? They're best known for friendly attitudes. Soft, cuddly, nice critters. Devia wondered why he looked a bit nervous for a moment. Well, that doesn't sound too bad. There are worse things to be associated with. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, let me show you around. Devia groaned as she laid back on her bed. It had been a month since she had landed, and she didn't think that the humans were taking to her at all. They kept asking, "What's up, Doc?" and then giggling about it for some reason. They did have to do something with the Doc Ramon. They were always pushing and shoving her when she came out of the surgery to inform the family. And they said the physical displays were meant to be affectionate, but they can kind of hurt. She expected life out here to be different than the pampered life that she was used to, but not quite like this. She couldn't even take a shower every day because they needed to ration water. It seems like she was always smelly, and her fur was starting to get dry and a bit rough. She also couldn't believe at how many injuries that they sustained. It wasn't like they were in a war zone. Besides, falling and accidents, they could inflict a number of injuries on purpose. At least once a day, it seemed that she had to set someone up with a cast, and so far 6 people had been shot. 6! Laurelines were omnivores, but there was a heavy emphasis on the vegetable and greens. Since she'd gotten here, she'd had only 2 days when she was away without eating some form of meat. They put it in everything. It was starting to give her stomach issues, which she was self-medicating for, with some of the medicine in the clinic, but that wasn't a very good solution. She was simply astonished that this species was surviving this long. One of the females had come in a week ago to give birth, and the infant had gotten tangled in the umbilical cord. It was like it was trying to strangle itself rather than be born. That whole affair had been a 16-hour nightmare. Without a nurse, it was just her and Doc having to take shifts and helping with some of the woman's family around them to assist. For the first time in her life, she needed to use a stim just to stay awake and alert through the entire procedure. She couldn't even operate because they had to save the various painkillers and drugs for more serious problems, the doc had told her. Maybe this had all been a mistake. She'd seen it in the news that her family was looking for her and posted some outrageous reward. What she hadn't expected was that the news that various other families were posting larger rewards for her capture. This was all a giant mess that she'd gotten herself into. So much for a second chance. Maybe she'd try and sneak out on the next supply shuttle. She doubted that she would be missed. None of the humans ever called her by her name, or offered her to come to dinner like they did for Doc Ramon. She heard whispers here and there when they didn't think that she could hear. They thought that it was strange for a Xeno to be here. Maybe they just needed a human doctor. The door to her room burst open and Hick rushed in. "Doc, come on, you gotta hide. Someone's looking for you." "What?" But the human grabbed her arm and pulled her up. She could barely keep up as he rushed through the halls and into the operating room. Then he cursed as the door to the back of the clinic started to open. He quickly opened up one of the storage cabinets and shoved her inside, closing the door heavily as she squeaked at being shut into such a small area. She was about to crawl out and demand answers when she heard the guttural verses being spoken. Get them over here. There are only 3 humans and law enforcement in this colony. The civilians don't matter." She heard footsteps and various people struggling. "You're fricking dead meat if you think you can just come into my town and push us around like this." That was the Sheriff Meredith. She sounded unhappy. "Don't translate that, Henry. That was Doc Ramon. Henry was the town mayor. Devia had only met him a few times. Tall, thin, dark skin, nice, but always nervous. I won't, Doc, but what the hell are we going to do?" "Hey, stop all that gibberish." She heard the versish. "He wants us to shut up," Henry translated. There wasn't any more talking for a minute as she stayed curled up, hiding. She tried to think about what to do while she hid, but was coming up with a blank. She was a doctor, not a fighter. What was she supposed to do? Something told her that this wasn't a team sent by her family. Finally, she heard the robotic voice, likely the universal translator device. "We want the fugitive." "Who?" That was Henry. "The Rawlin." "There is no fugitive here, fella. Just hard-working colonists." Henry again. "Don't play stupid. We know she's here. Hand over, and you won't need to suffer." "You're the one playing stupid. You killed 3 of us already, and you think we won't need to suffer?" That was Doc Ramon. Devia had hold on her grasp and thought about the 3 colonists that had already been killed because of her. "Maybe you're right. Either way, You don't tell, we start torture. If you think we'll talk, you're wrong. I know your type. Even if there was a Laureline here, which there isn't, if we gave them up, which we won't, you'd still kill us afterwards. He was speaking awfully loud, as if wanting to make sure everyone heard. Good point. She heard the blast of fire from the heavy thud of something dropping to the floor. Who, Doctor? We want to make sure that the next one dies slower. That was the doctor. Henry sounded faint, as if he could barely utter the words. She heard more Versesh then. Damn! That was the doctor. What do we do now? I don't know how much pain they can take. Frick it, just threaten them and find and kill their young. Did they forget that Henry could speak Versesh? Without being able to see the outside, she wasn't sure what was really going on. She was conflicted about what to do. She couldn't believe Doc had died trying to keep her hidden. She wanted to give herself up to save the others, but they said they'd kill them anyway. This was all her fault. You have children. Take or they die. I'm an orphan. That was Local's voice. You, family. Also an orphan. You gotta kill someone, just kill me. That was Hick. Why were they all willing to die for her? It didn't make sense. Someone talk, or the colony will burn. Look, I don't know if she's a fugitive, but there's a Xeno girl here in the colony. That was Henry. She sighed as she figured he'd try to give her up and save his people. She didn't blame him. Where's she? She's out at the ranch, way out of town. Bought some big property, lots of money, keeps to herself. Take us. Devia frowned, wondering who he was talking about. All right, let's all get loaded into the transport then. No, just you. Leave law enforcement here. You lie, they die. Fine, fine. She heard footsteps, and after a while the sheriff spoke up. Hey, Hick. Don't you think that it's good that there is only one ugly frecker here, with his back to a bunch of storage cabinets? Yeah, Ma, I think that's a good thing too. Shut up. She heard someone bark in Versesh. Slowly, she opened the door to let some light in. She could see the doc's body on the floor of the operating room, and there was a big yellow Verk brute just in front of the door, facing Meredith, Hick, and Yokel. With the light, she could look around her space and saw more of what was around her. Moving quietly, she opened up the door wider, reaching to the drawer above her. Slowly, she pulled it open and reached up, feeling around until she felt one of the boxes that she wanted. Making sure that the Verk wasn't aware of her movements, she pulled the box out of the drawer, opening up a fresh syringe and filled it with muscle relaxant. And then slowly and carefully as she could, she opened up the door and crawled out. The Verk was thankfully focused on the three humans. Gulping, she prepared herself and then jumped up, jamming the needle into the Verk's neck, slamming down the plunger. The creature let out a gargle and then toppled forward, hitting the ground heavily, with Devia clinging to its back. As soon as he was down, the humans moved. Hick kicked away the blaster, while Yokel pulled a knife and made sure that the Verk wasn't getting back up. Devia had to look away as he did that. She moved over to Doc's body. He'd been shot dead in the chest. She could tell the humans were moving and doing stuff, but she weakly hugged the Doc's body and began to cry. I'm sorry, she gasped out. Sweetie, what are you sorry for? Meredith asked. What do you mean? This is my fault. They're here for me, and you said 3 others have been killed already. I'm so sorry. No, sweetie. This was their fault. You didn't pull the trigger. You aren't responsible for what bad people do. As she hugged the Doc, she felt the sheriff pat her on the head and her long ears. If this is the way that they hunt criminals, then it's no wonder you broke their laws. What? Devia looked up, vision blurry with tears. They said that you're a fugitive. I'm a royal princess. I ran away so that I didn't have to deal with the life that I didn't want. That's why this is my fault. Why didn't you just let them take me? I didn't want anyone to die. I just wanted to be free. Damn, you're not even a criminal. All the more reason to help you out. Why are you so calm? Why was the Doc willing to die for me? He's only known me for a month. Sweetie, in the 1 month that you've been here, how many people have you saved? Not one of those idiots who got shot in a fight died. You saved Rose and her newborn. You're dealing with humans, sweetie. When you join our family, we treat you like one of our own. No matter what. Blood is thicker than water. But I'm not blood. You're the first, to visit our colony. Doc sang your praises when you saw your credentials, and after your first operation, he said that you could have picked any hospital in the known space, but instead you came out to help a bunch of dumb colonists to live like this. That makes you blood to us. Devia started to cry harder at the idea. She'd been ready to leave them behind, and now all of this happened. She didn't want anyone to die. The sheriff then stood, speaking to her comm. Everyone in position. She got some sort of reply and then spoke. Fire away. Devia jerked and a bit as she heard the gunfire coming from outside. Who's shooting? There were more out there. They thought me and the boys were the only ones with guns since we're the law. Well, they don't know humans. The fire lasted a few minutes before they finally ended. She got back on her comm. Got him? There was a pause. What about Henry? Another pause. Good. They're all dead and Henry's just fine. Come on, we got work to do. We'll need to pull their ship apart and make it look like they were never here. What? Why? Devia asked, in case anyone comes looking for them. But you mean you're going to keep hiding me here? Of course. I just told you that we're your family. And, to be honest, we need you now more than ever since I killed Doc. Aren't you mad that I brought this trouble? Honey, you just have to understand. We look after our own. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you came from. There is more to blood than being genetically related. I already tried to tell you that. But I heard people talk behind my back, and everyone invited Doc to dinner. But not me. I thought you all hated me. Oh, darling, we heard you complain about our food. Henry had ordered up some special veggies to get sent out with the next supply ship, so that we could throw you a proper welcome dinner. We didn't want you to feel obliged to eat what you don't like. And most humans haven't seen a Xeno before, so they were just curious about meeting you. Idle talk. Your family, Devia. So, get a trauma kit and find out if someone out there is hurt. Doc wouldn't want you wasting time crying about him. He'd want you helping people. Devia snuffed back the tears and nodded. The sheriff was right. She moved then, letting go of the Doc's body as Hick and Yoko and their mom headed out of the clinic. As she grabbed the only trauma kit that they had, she realized how this wasn't her second chance anymore. It was her third chance. If the humans were this ready to make her one of their own, then she'd never abandon them. With all of her studies, she figured the humans were nothing more than simple, violent barbarians. But clearly, that was a narrow mindset assessment. She'd never heard of a species that was willing to take in another like this with open arms, and apparently willing to die for them. What was the phrase that she'd used? Blood was thicker than water. If they claimed that she was blood, then who was she to disagree? She had a new family now, one willing to die for her protection and kill for her freedom. As she took 100 years, she vowed to repay her new family for the trouble that she'd brought them. She'd been born into power, wealth, and nobility, but she'd given it all up to find a real home. And clearly, she had. End of story. If you enjoyed this story and wish to support the author, the link is down below. If you would like to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so. They will also be listed in the description down below. But the easiest way to help this channel is to share it, subscribe, and like. And, as always, I will see you all in the next video, and I hope that you have a good one. Cheers!